Giordano Bruno, Nolan. Cause, Principle, and Unity. First dialogue. Speakers are Elitropio, Philoteo, Armiso. First to speak, Elitropio. Like felons used to the darkness, who come up to the light when freed from the depths of some gloomy tower, many trained in common philosophy and others will be clutched by fear, seized with the astonishment, and, unable to stand the new sun of your shining concepts, thoroughly unsettled. Philoteo. It is not the fault of the light, but their sight. The more excellent and beautiful the sun, the more hateful and harshly unwelcome it will be to night witches' eyes. Elitropio. In your hope of raising us out of the blind abyss into the sight of the open, peaceful and tranquil stars that shine with such beautiful variety against the Crulean mantle of heaven, Philoteo, you have picked an uncommon, unusual, and difficult venture. And though the helping hand of your compassion is held out to us men, the ungrateful will still attack you in ways that are as varied as there are animals generated and nourished within the gentle earth's ample and maternal bosom. For it is clear that the human species displays, in the particularities of its individuals, the variety of all other species together. In each of our individuals, the whole is present more explicitly than in the individuals of other species. Thus, some, as soon as they feel the fresh air, like the bleary-eyed mole, will tunnel straight back down into the earth to seek their natural inky depths. Others, like night birds, on seeing the vermilion ambassadress of the sun come up in the east, will be forced by the weakness of their eyes to repair their dingy retreats. All creatures banished from the presence of their celestial lights and doomed to the eternal chasms, cages, and caverns of Pluto. All animals, called by the horn of the fearsome Irenus, Alecto, will spread their wings and flee headlong to their dwellings. But the animals born to behold the sun, having waited out the hated night, will give many thanks to the merciful heavens, and, prepared to gain within the globose crystal of their eyes the rays for which they have so long waited and pined, will adore the east, not only with unwonted adoration in their hearts, but with voices and hands. Men will begin to speak when from the easted gilded balcony handsome Titan has let loose the fiery steeds who cleave the sleepy silence of the moist night. The docile, defenseless, and simple sheep flock will bleat, the horned oxen will bellow, heeded by their rustic ox herders, and Silenus quadrupeds will stray bray, frighten the stupid giants again for the gods' benefit. Tossing their muddy beds, the boars will defeat us in their obstinate grunting. Tigers, bears, lions, wolves, and the cunning fox, poking his head from the cave, will behold their high deserts, their flat hunting grounds, and will let forth from ferocious breasts their roars, growls, snarls, howls, and cries. In the air, on the fronds of branchy trees, the roosters, eagles, peacocks, cranes, doves, blackbirds, crows, sparrows and nightingales, magpies, ravens, cuckoos, and cicadas will lose no time responding, re-echoing with their ear-splitting chatter. Still further, from their mobile, liquid dominions, the white swans, the many-hued waterfowl, the swift razor-bills, the marsh ducks, the honking geese, and the carping frogs will disturb our ears with their din, such that the warm sunlight diffused in the air of our privileged hemisphere will find itself attended, greeted, and perhaps plagued by cries as numerous and as varied as are the breaths that derive them from the hollows of their respected beasts. Philoteo. It is not only common, but necessary and natural, that every animal utters its own cry. Beasts cannot form regulated accents and articulated sounds like men, since their physical makeup, nourishment, and tastes are dissimilar. Armiso. Please give me a chance to speak also, not about light, but of some circumstances that, far from comforting the senses, injure the feelings of whoever observes and reflects. For your own peace and quiet, that I wish for you with fraternal affection, I would not want these speeches of yours to be made into comedies, tragedies, laments, dialogues, or what have you, like the ones that circulated openly a while ago, and forced you to stay shut up in your homes. Philoteo. Speak frankly. Armiso. I have no intention of speaking like a holy prophet, as an abstruse oracle, like an apocalyptic visionary, or the she-ass of Balaam, beholding the angel. Nor will I discuss if I were exhilarated by Bacchus, or swollen with wind by the sluttish Parnassian muses, nor like a Sibyl impregnated by Phoebus, nor like a prognostic Cassandra, nor as if a Apollonian rapture had seized me from my toenails to the hair on my head, nor like the seer illuminated in the oracle or Delphic tripod, nor likewise Oedipus, probed in the riddles of the Sphinx, nor as Solomon before the enigmas of the Queen of Sheba, nor like Calchas, interpreter for the Olympian council, nor as Merlin possessed, nor as one emerged from the cave of Trophonius. Instead, I will speak in common, vulgar language, like a man who has had other things on his mind than go about distilling the juice of his brain and cerebellum to the point of his withering his pia mater and dura mater. What I mean is that I will talk as one who has no wits but his own, and to whom not even the garden or kitchen variety gods among the celestial court condescend to cast a straw, though they heap their favors in infinitum, even their horses, those gods, I say, that ordinarily show themselves more intimate, more familiar, and more congenial with us. I mean Bacchus, or the drunk mounted on the ass, or Pan, or Vertumnus, or Faunus, or Priapus, the ones who neither drink ambrosia nor taste nectar, unappreciative of the nymphs and pure water, but quench their own thirst at the bottom of the barrel with sour wines. Elotropio. Too long a preface. Armiso. Patience. The conclusion's swift. To put an end to this, I would like to say, I will offer you say words that need no deciphering, as if they had been distilled, passed through an alembic, condensed in a double boiler, and sublimated with a prescription of the quintessence. But such words as my wet nurse hammered into my skull, a woman as thick-skinned, big-chested, wide-hipped, ample-bellied, and broad-bottomed as that Latimer, as that Londoner I caught sight of in Westminster, who possessed such ample mammaries like hot water bottles for her stomach, that they seemed the half-boots of the immense St. Paragorio, and which, if tanned, would match a pair of Farrarese bagpipes. Elotropio. That is quite enough for a preface. Armiso. Well then, to come to the rest, leaving a little to one side observations and opinions concerning light and the potential splendor of your philosophy, I would like to hear from you in what terms you wish to greet, in particular, that brilliant doctrine which shines forth from the Ash Wednesday supper, what animals those are that perform in the Ash Wednesday supper. Are they aquatic, aerial, earthly, or lunatic? And, leaving aside the observations of Smitho, Prudenzio, and Frula, I would like to know if they are wrong or right, who claim that you bark like a rabid dog, in addition to sometimes playing the monkey, sometimes the wolf, sometimes the magpie, sometimes the parrot, now this animal, now that, mixing grave and serious words, moral and natural, ignoble and noble, philosophic and comic. Philoteo, do not be surprised, brother, for the scene was indeed a supper, where brains are guided by the passions or roused by the flavors and odors of food and drink. The supper will be verbal and spiritual, as logical consequence of its material and corporal guise. The dialogue has parts as different and various, therefore, as those which ordinarily comprise that other supper. The former has conditions, circumstances, and means of its own that are as peculiar to it as those of the latter may be. Armiso, help me get at your meaning, please. Philoteo, in the one case, as is fitting and proper, there are the salads and main dishes, fruits and uncommon victuals, hors d'oeuvres and spices, warm and cold, raw and cooked, food of aquatic and terrestrial origin, cultivated and wild, ripe and green, food for the healthy and for the ill, dishes for gourmets and dishes for the hungry, ones that are light and substantial, bland and salted, tart and sweet, bitter and mild. Similarly, in the other case, by a certain analogy, contradictions and differences have appeared, suitable to the various stomachs and tastes of those whom it may please to part in our symbolic banquet, so that no one can complain of having attended in vain, and whoever does not like one thing can help himself to another. Armiso, true. But what is your answer if, in addition, at your banquet, at your supper, things appear that are good neither for salads nor main dishes, nor good as fruits or fillers, nor cold or nor hot, raw nor cooked, good neither for the healthy nor for the sick, stuff that should never have left the hands of the cook or confectioner, stuff that stirs no appetite and satisfies no hunger? Philoteo, you will see that, in this, our supper does not differ from any other that it may be dished out. As with that other, as you are savoring your meal, you may scald your mouth with a bite that is too hot. So you have to either spew it back out, or bandy it about your plate with tears and crying until you can give it that cursed shove in order to speed it down your gorge. Or you jar some tooth, or you bite into your tongue at the same time as your bread, or else there is a piece of grit that breaks up and sticks between your teeth, forcing you to spit out the whole mouthful. Perhaps some hair or a whisker off the cook glues to your palate and makes you nearly vomit, or else a fish bone lodges in your gullet and makes you wheeze, or another small bone lodged sideways in your throat threatens to suffocate you. To our and everybody's displeasure, analogous and equivalent things have been found at our supper. All that is due to the sin of the first man, Adam, because of our ancestor, perverse human nature is condemned to find disgust joined to delight. Armiso, spoken with sanctity and piety, but what is your answer to those who call you a raging cynic? Philoteo, I will concede the point readily, at least in part. Or miso. But you know that is less dishonorable for a man to undergo abuses than to inflict them? Philoteo. Yes, it is enough that my actions are labeled vengeance, and the others abuse. Or miso. Even the gods are liable to receive insults, suffer censure, and bear reproach. But to insult, censure, and reproach are the business of people who are low, mean, cowardly, and worthless. Philoteo. True. That is why we do not injure, but rather rebut the injuries that are cast. Not so much as butt at condemned philosophy, proceeding in such a way that other insults are not added to those already received. Or miso. So you want to act the biting dog, so that no one dares molest you? Philoteo. Exactly, because I desire peace, and unpleasantness displeases me. Or miso. Yes. But they deem them you proceed with too much severity. Philoteo. That is to prevent them from coming back, and to daunt others from coming into dispute with me or someone else, or treating our demonstrations with such expedients. Or miso. The offense was private, the retaliation public. Philoteo. Nonetheless, just for that, many errors are committed in private, which they are justly chastised in public. Or miso. But that way you end up ruining your reputation, and making yourself more blameworthy than those others, because the world will declare you impatient, fantastic, daft, and bizarre. Philoteo. It does not matter, as long as they stop harassing me from now on. If I shake the club of the cynic at them, that is so that they will let me go about my business in peace. It is clear they do not want my kindness, but they should not exercise their coarseness on me. Or miso. But do they think it is fitting for a philosopher to set about avenging himself? Philoteo. If those who harass me were Xanthippus, I would be Socrates. Or miso. Don't you know that patience and long-suffering does everyone good, and that through them we become like heroes and celebrated gods, who, according to some, defer their vengeance, and according to others, neither to take revenge, nor to give to anger? Philoteo. You are wrong to think I cared to have revenge. Or miso. What then? Philoteo. I was concerned with correcting, an activity that also makes us similar to gods. You know that Jove ordered poor Vulcan to work even on holidays, so that his cursed anvil goes on receiving the fierce blows of the hammer externally. No sooner is one raised than others come smashing down, so that the righteous thunderbolts used to chastise the guilty and unlawful are never in short supply. Or miso. There is a difference between you and Jove's blacksmith, the husband of the goddess Cyprus. Philoteo. It is enough, in any case, that I am perhaps not unlike the gods in patience and long-suffering, and those qualities were put to the test in this affair, and in that I gave full rein my scorn and never spurred on in my anger. Or miso. To be castigator of the multitude, especially, is not the job of just anyone. Philoteo. Add to that, especially when he has nothing to do with the multitude. Or miso. They say that you may be an agitator in a country not your own. Philoteo. And I say two things. First, one should not kill a foreign physician because he tries to administer cures not administered by the natives. Secondly, I say that the true philosopher's country is all the world. Or miso. But if they consider you neither philosopher nor physician nor countryman? Philoteo. That does not make me any the less so. Armiso, who will vouch you that? Philoteo, the gods who have put me here. I who find myself here, and those who have eyes to see me here. Armiso, your witnesses are very few and little known. Philoteo, the true physicians are indeed few and little known, while all these people are truly ill, and I repeat that they have no right to inflict or to allow others to inflict such treatment on those who offer honest merchandise, foreigners or not. Armiso, few are acquainted with this merchandise. Philoteo, pearls are no less precious for that reason, nor do we, therefore, dedicate less effort rallying to their defense, to save and vindicate them with all our might from the trampling of swine. May the gods favor me, Armiso, since I have never carried out acts of vengeance out of sordid self-love or low self-interest, but out of devotion for the offended majesty of my beloved mother, philosophy. False friends and false children, for there is no worthless pedant, do-nothing phrase-maker, stupid fawn or ignorant hack, who does not aspire to be numbered among her family by showing up loaded with books growing out of his beard, or getting up prosopopirical by other means, have wasted her so away that, among the common people, philosopher rhymes with impostor, quack, swindler, good for nothing, charlatan and howling pedant, good only as home entertainment or country scarecrow. Elitropio. Indeed, philosophers as a race are rated by most men as more despicable than house chaplains sprung up from the dredges of humanity, who, however, disgrace the priesthood far less than the philosophers, chosen from among every sort of beast, have shamed philosophy. Philoteo. So let us praise the ancient race. Philosophers then had so much value, from their ranks were recruited lawmakers, counselors, and kings. And the counselors and kings were such that, from those functions, they were elevated to priesthood. In our age, most of the priests are such that they themselves are discredited. And to discredit to the divine laws, nearly all the philosophers we see are worth so little that they are disparaged along their own science. What is worse, a multitude of scoundrels, like a mass of needles, have grown used to smothering with poisonous mirages. With little truth and virtue get revealed to the few. Armiso. I know no philosopher who gets so aroused in favor of discredited philosophy, nor do I perceive any, Allotropio, as impassioned by his science as Teophelio. What would happen if all other philosophers had the same character? I mean, if they had so little patience. Allotropio. Those others have not made so many discoveries, nor do they have so much to preserve or defend. They can easily devalue philosophy that is worthless, or what is nearly worthless, or that which they do not know. But one who has found truth which is hidden in treasure, is inspired by beauty of the divine face, and grows jealous to defend her against plunder, negligence, and contamination. Just so, a miser may conceive a passion for gold, diamonds, and carbuncles, or a man for the beauty of a foul woman. Armiso. But let us go back to our subject and arrive at the question why. They say of you, Teophilo, that your supper, you criticize and insult a whole city, an entire province, a complete kingdom. Philoteo. That I never thought, never indeed did. If I had ever thought, wished, or done so, I would condemn myself with utmost severity, and bend over backwards to make 1,000 disavowals, retractions, and disclaimers. Not only if I had insulted a noble and ancient realm such as this, but any other, however great its reputation for barbarism. And I mean not only if I had offended any city, however widespread its reputation for incivility, but even if I had insulted any class whatsoever, however savage it was held to be, or even if any one family, however inhospitable it was considered. There cannot be a race, kingdom, city, or house where contrary and opposing manners do not exist, and to which one can assign the same temperament to all, such that it is impossible for one man to find pleasure in what displeases another. Armiso, as far as I am concerned, I have read, reread, and meditated upon all you have said, although on some points I do not know just why. I find you a bit excessive, and you seem to me for the most part to proceed with moderation, reason, and discernment. But the noise has spread, as I have set out. Allotropia, that noise of this and other things has been bandied about through the measureness of some of those who felt themselves touched, eager to take revenge, but conscious of the weakness of other arguments. Their doctrine, their intelligence, and their strength, they do not only fabricate many lies as they can, to which no one but their like gives credit, but they try to enlist partisans by making out your own condemnation of some individuals constitutes a pervasive insult. Armiso, I think on the contrary, there are people, not without wisdom and judgment, who gauge the insult universal because you indicate certain manners as belonging to people of this or that nation. Philoteo, but what are these alleged manners? Are not similar or worse ones? Not to mention manners much more peculiar in genus, species, and number found in the most excellent parts of the world? Would you claim that I were abusive and non-ungrateful toward my own country if I said that at Naples, Italy, or Nola, similar or more criminal manners can be found? Would you say that I had abused that blessed realm, often set at the head on the right hand of our globe simultaneously, governor and tamer of other nations, and ever regarded by us and by others as mistress, nurse, and mother of all virtues, disciplines, humanities, and the qualities of modesty and courtesy? When esteemed poets themselves have justly sung its praises, but yet do not shrink from calling her, if the occasion requires, mistress of all vice, error, greed, and cruelty? Allotropia, this is certainly in keeping with the precepts of your philosophy, by virtue of which you maintain that contraries coincide both in principle and in reality. Thus, minds most suited to high, worthy, and generous enterprises will fall, if they are perverted, into extreme vice. Moreover, we generally find the rarest and choicest wits among the most foolish and ignorant folk, and there where the people are generally the least civil and most lacking in courtesy, we find, in some individual cases, extreme civility and good manners, so that, in one way or another, many nations seem to have received an equal measure of perfections and imperfections. Philoteo, what you say is true, Armiso, and yet, Teophilo, I am distressed, as are many others, that in our friendly nation you have come up against the kind of people who have so irked you that you vent your complaints by means of a sooty supper, instead of having met those, much more numerous, who would have shown you how much your country, even if it is presented by your countrymen as utterly cut off from the whole world, is disposed to all literature, arms, chivalry, humanities, and courtesy. We venture with all our strength not to be inferior to our ancestors in those domains, nor to be outclassed by other nations, especially those who believe themselves naturally endowed with noble manners, science, arms, and civility.